The air in the sterile conference room felt heavy, a thick silence after what had just unfolded. It started with a misprinted report. Not just any report, but the quarterly projections I'd painstakingly crafted for the Monday board meeting, now mangled beyond recognition. I stood there, pulling the charred remnants from the belly of the machine, a defeated sigh escaping my lips. That old printer, it seemed, always had a vendetta against me. But it wasn't the jam that signaled something was wrong. It was the eerie quiet that followed. That unsettling stillness, like everyone had just witnessed a corporate ghost. No one met my gaze. Email chains abruptly halted, and even Brenda from accounting offered me coffee without her usual passive-aggressive undertone. I knew, with a sinking feeling, that something significant was brewing. As I walked back to my desk, where my neatly arranged, color-coded client folders sat like obedient soldiers, I could feel the shift, a cold draft seeping in through the cracks. Yet, I wasn't truly worried. Not yet. I was Fiona, 12 years deep at Synapse Innovations. The problem solver, the rock, the woman who once salvaged a multi-million-dollar client on the brink of defection during a fire drill, with someone openly weeping into a box of bagels in the break room. I had navigated countless organizational shakeups before. Honestly, I'd survived 4 CEOs, 3 major rebrands, and 1 memorable incident involving a disgruntled junior associate and a glitter bomb. You learn to ignore the rumblings. Now, I know many of you are listening to stories like this without hitting that subscribe button. You're practically squatting in my virtual office. Do me a favor, click that follow, drop a like. It keeps this narrative engine running and fuels the tireless editors who translate my professional sagas into compelling stories. All right, let's continue. On paper, I didn't appear to be a corporate rebel. My nails were always a subdued taupe, my blazer game consistently sharp but never flashy. I was the kind of woman who carried her own pen for signing contracts, always blue ink, always a spare tucked in my purse. I remembered assistants' birthdays and CC'd people with terrifying precision. But beneath that perfectly composed exterior lay a mind like a great white in a well-tailored suit. Silent, utterly focused, and utterly ruthless when pushed into a corner. I had built the Strategic Partnerships division from the ground up. In my first quarter, I secured a regional logistics client that quickly blossomed into a national titan. By year 4, my name was the one clients specifically requested, even the notoriously difficult ones who believed they were a divine gift to the tech world. I didn't just manage relationships, I orchestrated them like symphonies. Deadlines were consistently met, clients were effortlessly charmed, and revenue soared. I wasn't merely essential, I was foundational infrastructure. So, when whispers of a company-wide restructuring began to hum around the office, like a failing refrigerator, I dismissed them with a polite smile and a sip of lukewarm tea. Probably just another high-priced consultant sniffing around for billable hours. I possessed a professional gravitas that made nonsense slide off me like rain from a well-oiled tarp. But then, Friday arrived. The email subject line, important departmental update, mandatory attendance. The body, conference room C, 3:00 p.m. No emojis, no mention of refreshments, just a palpable sense of dread. I walked into that meeting with the quiet dignity of a woman unperturbed by office politics, because I always won through sheer results. Liam, my boss's nephew, fresh out of some obscure MBA program and still unironically using the word synergy, was already seated. I noted his self-satisfied smirk, his overly confident posture, and his truly terrible tie. I filed it all away. I noticed absolutely everything. The vice president cleared his throat awkwardly and began. We are proud to announce a bold new leadership direction for strategic partnerships. I blinked. Liam beamed. We've selected Liam to spearhead this initiative as the new head of partnerships, the VP stated, with all the charisma of a damp paper towel. There it was, The betrayal, delivered not with a difficult conversation, but with a smirk and a poorly designed PowerPoint slide. The applause that followed was slow, hesitant, and laced with fear. HR clapped as if at gunpoint. Someone in the back mumbled, "Congratulations," and Liam somehow managed to mispronounce the name of one of our biggest clients during his impromptu acceptance speech. I didn't speak, didn't even flinch. I simply nodded, rose, and exited the room before the coffee cart even arrived. No dramatic flair, no slamming doors, no "you'll regret this" monologue. Just the quiet click of my heels down the hallway, a rhythmic countdown to something no one else saw coming. Back at my desk, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in nearly 5 years, pulling out my original employment contract. I scanned it with a surgeon's precision, my eyes landing on the words I had committed to memory. Clause 8. In the event of promotional bypass due to internal familial conflict of interest, non-compete provisions shall be deemed null, and the employee shall retain client claim rights for personally acquired accounts. I smiled. Then I opened my email. Subject: Legal at Synapse Innovations. Clause 8. No body text, no attachments, just that single, potent line. Then I logged off. Not to cry, not to drink, not to spiral. I went to my favorite bar, ordered a bourbon neat, and watched the sunset paint the city skyline like stained glass as my phone began to vibrate incessantly on the table. Unknown number. Then again, and again. I didn't answer. Clause 8 wasn't a warning. It was a loaded weapon I had meticulously polished for over a decade. The Monday following Liam's little coronation felt like walking into a funeral for common sense. He arrived 20 minutes late to his first all-hands meeting, clutching an iced coffee the size of a small child, grinning as if he'd just won the lottery. He wore a blazer 2 sizes too small, the sleeves bunched at his wrists as if the fabric itself was trying to escape. He called it startup casual. I called it unemployment chic. He kicked off the meeting with a slide boldly titled, "Let's Disrupt the Disruption." No data, no clear objectives, just a generic stock photo of a man in a suit leaping across a chasm. He uttered phrases like synergize our core competencies and optimize our brain velocity. At one point, he gestured vaguely in my direction and called me the backbone of the past. Then he winked. Just winked. That profound silence you hear in movies right before someone gets slapped? That's what filled the room. I didn't blink, didn't twitch. But if you looked closely enough, you would have seen my pen halt its movement for just a fraction of a second, as if my thoughts had paused to pack a duffel bag. Later that day, HR summoned me into a glass-walled conference room, smiling like a group of newly programmed androids who had just completed their empathy training. "Fiona," one of them cooed, "we just want to express our gratitude. You truly paved the way for this next phase of growth." Another added, "You should be incredibly proud. Liam is going to take everything you've built and amplify it." That comment earned a single, slow, almost reptilian blink from me. Proud? This was the same Liam who once sent a pitch deck to a major client with another company's logo still on the footer. The same Liam who, on a Zoom call, mistakenly called a 3-year retainer client Brad, even though her name was Susan, and it was clearly visible in her email signature. Liam, whose most significant professional achievement was selling dubious energy drinks to his fraternity brothers out of the back of his Honda, proclaiming it a beverage disruption startup. Now, he was going to amplify. That night, I returned to my small, meticulously organized apartment. No clutter, no noise. The kind of space where you could truly hear yourself think, and more importantly, strategize. I poured a glass of Cabernet, opened my laptop, and typed in my old Dropbox password. It hadn't changed in a decade. Inside, a folder simply labeled Contingencies. Within that folder, my contract, scanned, highlighted, annotated. I scrolled slowly, past the equity clauses, past the performance bonuses that never quite materialized, past the glowing annual reviews from 3 different managers, all of whom, unfortunately, couldn't push my name to the next level due to structural limitations. And there it was, Clause 8, not even bolded, simply waiting, like a cleverly hidden snare beneath the corporate carpet. I read it again, slowly. Then I reached for my phone, opened my notes app, and typed just 2 words. Time's up. The following day, Liam led his first external strategy meeting. He mispronounced the name of our highest-grossing client twice, called the COO of another company dude, and attempted to explain ROI to a woman who had literally invented the metric framework he was quoting. I sat 2 seats down, hands folded, face neutral. But my eyes were already elsewhere, mentally scanning new office floor plans, calculating legal fees, weighing different logo fonts. Back in my office, Liam swung by, uninvited. "Hey, Theo," he said, leaning against my doorframe as if auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. "Need your magic on the Altrek account. You're just so good with the less exciting clients." I stared at him for a moment too long, then replied, "You mean the client that generates 26% of our annual revenue?" He blinked. "Yeah, that one." I smiled. "Of course, Liam. I'll take care of it." And I did, just not in the way he expected. That night, I drafted my resignation. No body text, no explanation. Just one cold, precise subject line. Clause 8. The email departed my personal account at 7:03 p.m. No body, no punctuation, just that single subject line. It was the quietest detonation the company had ever witnessed. I hit send, closed my laptop, and gazed at my reflection in the dark window. Behind me, the city lights flickered like dying embers, blinking boardrooms, overpriced condos, the soft glow of a world too busy congratulating itself to notice what it had just irrevocably lost. My phone began to buzz before I even reached the kitchen. First, it was the general counsel, David, who once told me Clause 8 was cute, but ultimately harmless. Then, his deputy. Then, the CEO himself, Kenneth. His caller ID lit up like a fire alarm. I let it ring, then again and again, until finally, I simply placed the phone face down and poured myself a glass of water, my hands steady, my eyes blank. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I didn't do noise. I did damage. Silent, surgical, and permanent. Across town, in a boardroom illuminated by the sickly glow of late-night LED panels, Kenneth stared at the email forwarded from legal, with the slack-jawed horror of a man who just discovered his car was towed with him still inside it. His assistant asked if she should prepare a statement. He waved her off, like a drowning man rejecting a life preserver. Clause 8. Damn it, Clause 8. How could he have forgotten? I had insisted on that clause myself, back when the company was small enough that I sat 3 feet from his desk. Back when they called me the closer and told me I had a seat at the table anytime I wanted. Back before nepotism and boardroom egos twisted promises into punchlines. He remembered the negotiation. I had calmly slid the clause across the table and said, "If you ever decide blood is thicker than profit, I walk, and I don't walk alone." At the time, Kenneth had laughed. "You'll never need this, Fiona," he had said. "Your family." Now, I had walked, and I had taken the company's very heartbeat with me. Back in my apartment, I moved with the precision of someone performing a sacred ritual. I retrieved a slim black folder from the drawer beneath my coffee machine. It was labeled After. Inside, a short checklist. Send resignation. Activate LLC Ein. Notify legal counsel. Call Clara regarding Altrek. Clean inbox. I opened a private browser tab and filed for a business account under Granite Signal Consulting, a name I had chosen 2 years prior, on a rainy Tuesday, when Liam first blundered into the office like a clueless golden retriever in loafers. I had seen the writing on the wall even then. I just needed to know precisely where the bricks would fall. I wasn't leaving in anger. Anger burns hot, fast, and loud. This was colder, more permanent. At headquarters, Kenneth was barking orders into his phone, demanding client lists, referring to legal as a bunch of overpaid paperweights. He demanded to know which accounts I had technically originated versus those I had merely maintained. The answer, when it came, punched through the line like a coffin nail. She originated 3 of our top 5. Define originated, he hissed. She signed them, built them, managed them, renewed them. On record. Kenneth fell silent. In my inbox, I found 3 flagged emails from former clients, the kind who had my personal number and sent me Christmas cards with handwritten notes. I drafted a reply. Casual, precise. Nothing actionable yet, just, I'll have more freedom to help starting next week. Let's catch up. I stared at the cursor for a moment, then hit send. I didn't draft a tearful goodbye message, a LinkedIn post thanking the company for an incredible journey. No farewell lunch with sheet cake in the conference room. I'd eaten too much of that cake watching other people fail upward. I just disappeared. My old calendar empty, my Slack quiet, my office dark. HR pinged me twice, asking if I wanted an exit interview. I left them on read because some exits don't require permission. They just require silence, and a contract clause they never thought I'd remember. Liam's first major meeting began with him spilling cold brew across the boardroom table and ended with him frantically Googling the word escalation in real time. Somewhere between the two, he managed to bungle a product roadmap, insult a junior developer by calling him code guy, and attribute a 2-year client retention strategy, written, executed, and nurtured by me, to team vibes. The client on the other end of the call was Mr. Henderson. Henderson, who didn't laugh at bad jokes. Henderson, who once told a CFO to shut up or get out during a live procurement negotiation. So, when Liam cheerfully announced, "This new direction is going to synergize our pathways," Mr. Henderson didn't even blink. He simply leaned forward, narrowed his eyes slightly, and asked, "Where's Fiona?" Liam chuckled like a sitcom character awaiting a laugh track. "Oh," Fiona paved the way. "I'm just here to carry the torch." Mr. Henderson didn't smile. "You dropped it." The meeting wrapped 15 minutes early. No follow-up questions, no confirmation of timelines, just Mr. Henderson's executive assistant curtly asking if the decks could be resent, but with real data this time. Liam stumbled back into his office, visibly sweating through his light gray shirt. The interns avoided eye contact. His calendar, once overflowing with onboarding lunches and CEO one-on-ones, was suddenly suspiciously blank. Meanwhile, 4 floors up, Kenneth was pacing frantically. He had just emerged from a finance check-in that confirmed his worst fears. Altric was stalling on their renewal. Archon Corp, too. Both had been my clients from day one. How many contracts had her name on them directly? Kenneth barked. Legal pulled up the files. One of the paralegals, a kid barely old enough to rent a car, swallowed hard and said, 3 of our top 5. She's the signatory of record, and according to Clause 8, she has clear origin rights. Kenneth sank into his chair as if someone had severed the strings holding him upright. He waved vaguely at his laptop. Check her activity. Did she leave any signs? Any trail? They pulled up my digital history. No breach, no leaks. But one ping stood out. An email, not sent from the company account, detected through metadata in a client-side BCC from fmercerconsulting@gmail.com to Clara. Jordan, https://www.google.com, search Altrek Partners. Com. Subject, quick catch-up. Body, free to talk next week? It was dated 2 days after my resignation. Kenneth stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "She's already making moves." Across the building, Liam attempted to salvage his dignity by scheduling a team sync. It began with him blaming an intern for technical confusion, then pointing to a resourcing bottleneck as Fiona's legacy clutter. She didn't really empower handoffs, he claimed. The team sat stone-faced. One brave account manager raised her hand. Liam, what's the current status of the Q3 rollouts? He blinked. That's in motion. You know, agile stuff. Which clients are you prioritizing for sequencing? Another blink. All of them. The silence was so thick you could spread it on toast. Later that afternoon, HR received 3 anonymous complaints, all using the exact same phrase. Leadership vacuum. At 6:12 p.m., one of my oldest colleagues forwarded me a Slack message Liam had sent to the team. It read, "Hey everyone, let's rally around this new chapter. Big shoes to fill, but I've got new souls." I read it once, twice, then smiled, not a smirk. A true smile, the kind that says, "You just made my job infinitely easier." I minimized the message and opened my spreadsheet titled Transition Outreach. 4 names were already marked in green. Clara, Mr. Henderson, Julian from Archon, each marked likely to switch. Trust established, high dissatisfaction. My phone pinged, a new message from Mr. Henderson. Available Thursday. Let's chat. I poured myself a second glass of wine. Outside, the city spun on, completely unaware. Inside, I was building something no one could stop, one silent call at a time. My new website was nothing fancy. Just 4 clean pages and a logo I had sketched on a napkin during my second glass of Tempranillo. It read, Granite Signal Consulting, underneath in smaller letters. We don't chase noise, we build signal. No headshot, no blog, no performative mission statements about empowerment through synergy. Just the essentials. Services, contact, credentials. A line I had waited 12 years to type without blinking. Founder, Fiona Mercer. By Tuesday, it was live. By Thursday, it was found. Word traveled not through billboards, but through whispers. The kind that float across upscale dinners, get passed between executive assistants over kale salads, and land in Slack channels titled Internal-Only PLs. I didn't cold email a single soul, didn't post on LinkedIn. My version of marketing was absence, a sudden silence where a powerhouse used to be. That silence began to echo. Alteryx stalled their renewal for the 2nd consecutive week. Archon Corp requested a contract review delay, citing leadership transition concerns. Liam blamed Q2 fatigue. HR blamed legacy process gaps. Legal blamed ambiguous retention rights. No one blamed me because no one could find me, not officially. But one morning, I woke up to an email sent to my consulting inbox. Subject line, confidential. Quick eyes on this. From Mr. Henderson at www.google.com/search QOSHaltrickPartners.com. Body. Fiona. Got a new vendor proposal that smells like a rubber fire. Mind taking a peek, off the record? No rush, but sooner is better. H. I didn't reply immediately. That was key. I waited 5 hours, then responded with one line. Send it. I'll give you signal. 5 minutes later, it was in my inbox. A 48-page Frankenstein of jargon and desperation, written by someone who clearly believed blockchain and trust were interchangeable words. I marked it up like a high school English teacher grading the class clown's essay. I returned it the next morning, brimming with comments, insightful questions, and surgical suggestions that exposed the vendor's plan as overpriced fluff, with a side of significant legal risk. Mr. Henderson replied, That's the Fiona I remember. Let's talk more soon. I left it there. Meanwhile, at my former company, the finance team began asking uncomfortable questions. Why are 3 of our top clients stalling? Why did the last 2 sales decks go unopened? Why are our Q3 forecasts down 17% in 6 days? The VP of Sales suggested it was merely seasonal. The CFO wasn't buying it. She quietly asked legal for any updates on the Clause 8 situation. They had none. I hadn't broken any rules. I hadn't even officially engaged a client yet. No breach, no lawsuit, no discernible trail. But a profound chill had settled over the boardroom. They felt my absence like a vital organ had been removed. Everything still ran, technically, but nothing worked quite the same. And I was thriving. My workspace was my kitchen table. My dress code was barefoot with a side of vengeance. I had time to stretch in the mornings, time to truly think between calls, time to read contracts slowly and thoroughly, the way I used to, before corporate bureaucracy chewed hours into meaningless ribbons. I was building, slowly but correctly, and I wasn't alone. 2 former colleagues had already reached out, not to gossip, but to ask how I did it. One of them, Maria, handled logistics like a master surgeon and had once transformed a failing project into a $2 million upsell with a single vendor switch. I replied, "You ever want to build something that respects your brain? Let me know." No pressure, just an open window. By the end of the week, I had a list. Not a pipeline, not a roadmap. A list of people who remembered, who had witnessed how the corporate sausage was made and had grown tired of consuming it. The company still hadn't figured it out. They believed clients were dragging their feet because of the market. They thought I had retired. They didn't realize I was sharpening a blade in a room just out of their view. And every day they kept my name off their radar was another inch I carved into that edge. Monday, 9:02 a.m. Sharp. An email hit the firm's shared inbox like a bowling ball through stained glass. From Clara. Jordan at https://www.google.com. Search Q Altric Partners. Com. 2 partnerships at thefirm.com. CC legal@thefirm.com. Subject Project Lancer. Third-party oversight following recent internal transitions. Altrek would like to formally request Fiona Mercer as independent oversight for Project Lancer, effective immediately. We require her expertise to ensure continuity and strategic clarity. Please advise on next steps. Clara Jordan, VP Strategy, Altrek Partners. The silence that followed was biblical. Kenneth read it 3 times before muttering, "You've got to be kidding me." Liam, already sweating through another one of his disruption blue button-downs, piped up, "That's insane! She can't just step in like she's still one of us. Isn't that a violation or something?" The senior legal counsel looked up, adjusted his glasses, and deadpanned. "She walked under Clause 8. She owns her origin rights. That includes the right to serve as a third party. She's clean." Liam blinked. "So, we can't stop her?" The lawyer shrugged. "You could ask her nicely, or try to undercut her. But if you go legal, you'll lose, and you'll make it public." Kenneth muttered something unintelligible and stood so fast his chair tipped backward. He stormed out of the conference room, barking at his assistant to get Altric on the damn phone. 10 minutes later, I received an email from a shell-shocked operations manager at the firm. "Hi, Fiona. We saw the request from Altric. Would you be open to discussing a cooperative oversight structure in which you partner directly with Liam? Please advise availability." I read it while slicing apples in my kitchen. I didn't reply, didn't even click mark as read. I simply placed the phone face down on the counter and let the silence build, like a wave curling at the edge of a cliff. By noon, Liam attempted to take matters into his own hands. He hastily drafted an email to Altric, a rambling, passive-aggressive mess, somewhere between PR damage control and insecure tech bro wannabe energy. It included gems like, "While we respect Ms. Mercer's past contributions, current leadership is more aligned with next-gen scalability and modern methodology, and her legacy approach may not fully integrate with our current innovation pipeline, but we're open to accommodating her in limited scopes." It was meant for Clara. He accidentally CC'd the entire Alltrek procurement team, my old account manager, and somehow, me. When I opened it, mid-yoga, the subject line read, Let's talk Lancer. Managing Fiona. I didn't respond. I simply exhaled, calmly, rolled up my mat, and turned on my espresso machine. Liam, realizing his egregious error 10 minutes later, sent a frantic correction email filled with backpedaling jargon and a fake smiley emoji at the end. It didn't help. By Tuesday, Alltrek submitted a revised contract draft that completely removed my former company as a strategic partner, listing me as sole oversight. Kenneth called an emergency meeting. Legal suggested trying to enforce a reputation clause. The CFO shut that down instantly. She hasn't spoken. She hasn't posted. She hasn't even tweeted. You'd be suing a ghost. One of the junior analysts articulated it best. She's not fighting us. She's just winning. The silence I maintained became legendary. In the absence of denial, my confidence became fact. Every email I didn't send made them sweat harder. Every call I didn't return was interpreted as a calculated power move. My quiet was infinitely louder than their rising panic. Meanwhile, at Granite Signal, I took a single call from Julian at Archon Corp. Hey Fio, just FYI, if your rates are the same as last year, we're in. Legal's already drafted the amendment. I smiled. I'll have it signed by Friday. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. I simply added Julian to the confirmed column of my spreadsheet and moved on. Because while the firm was flailing in endless meetings, desperately trying to decode my intentions, I was already 3 clients deep into my next empire. Thursday morning, 8:47 a.m., my inbox pinged with the familiar scent of desperation disguised as opportunity. Subject: exciting new role proposal. Confidential. It came from Mara in HR, the same Mara who once remarked during a performance review that I lacked personal branding flair. Now, the flairless ghost they tried to erase was single-handedly redirecting their top-tier clientele like Moses parting the Red Sea. The email began with the usual HR perfume, passive flattery mixed with corporate therapy speak. Fiona, we've been reflecting on your invaluable contributions and would love to explore a fresh opportunity that aligns with your unique strengths and evolving goals. Translation: we're bleeding out and your fingerprints are still on the bandages. It offered a temporary advisory position, strategic brand realignment consultant, 3-month term, board visibility, a generous hourly rate, full autonomy. The kind of offer that would make most ex-employees perk up, feel vindicated, maybe even consider stepping back in for a victory lap. I didn't even read to the bottom. I forwarded it to my lawyer with one word: declined. No signature, no pleasantries. My lawyer's reply came 3 minutes later. Understood. Very clean move. I'll notify them formally. Later that day, while sipping coffee on my balcony and watching dog walkers drag half-awake beagles past my building, I received a call from a restricted number. I let it ring out. Again. By noon, my phone vibrated with a new message from a friend in operations. Board chatter. Someone finally admitted Kenneth ignored Clause 8. Might blow up. Attached was a screenshot of an internal thread between 2 board members. One line stood out, circled in red. We told him about Clause 8 in 2021. He laughed and said, if Fiona ever invokes it, it means we're already screwed. I grinned, my teeth showing. I hadn't smiled like that in months. I opened my notes app and jotted it down like a line of poetry. He knew. That night, Mara followed up. A second email, shorter and significantly more honest. Fiona, if this is about Liam, please know we've spoken with him. There's room to revise the leadership structure. We're open to your terms. Best, Mara. I didn't respond. I simply added another line to my spreadsheet next to Mara's name. Reactive, late. Still doesn't get it. Meanwhile, inside the firm, damage control was failing to gain any traction. Clients weren't angry, they were just gone, quietly migrating to my new orbit, like satellites finding their rightful planet. Finance ran projections with me gone. They weren't pretty. Q4 client retention, minus 38%. Forecasted churn, 9.4 million. Net new revenue, 1.7 million. Mostly from discounting and emergency packages. The board convened an after-hours meeting. Kenneth was asked if my clause could be renegotiated retroactively. The legal team laughed, actually laughed, then politely reminded the room that I had followed protocol to the letter. "Walked through the door you left open," one of them said, and locked it behind her. The firm sent one last olive branch. A branded gift box, a glass plaque, a generic thank you note, and a potted succulent that arrived half dead. I took a photo of it, captioned it, "Their Loyalty," in plant form. I didn't post it. I just saved it to a private album titled Museum of Regret. As the week closed, I reviewed my newest contract. Signed, scanned, and wire initiated. Archon Corp. Locked in. That made 3. I stared at my screen, then whispered to no one, "They're not calling because I'm loud. They're calling because I left." Then I shut my laptop, poured a glass of Pinot Grigio, and toasted the silence. I clicked sign for the 3rd time that week and watched the digital ink bind another 7-figure contract to my name. Altrek, Archon Corp., Convergent Logistics. 3 titans, 3 empires I had personally nurtured during my old life, all now officially swimming in my new pond, Granite Signal Consulting. I didn't frame the contracts. I didn't even print them. They were already stored, triple backed up and encrypted across 2 clouds and a cold drive. Profit margin, 72%. Overhead, practically nil. My team, 2 laptops, 1 espresso machine, and a legal retainer named Gloria, who billed like a sniper, only when it truly mattered. My days were structured, but soft. Morning strategy calls in pajama pants, midday walks, afternoons for deep work. Contracts, pitch decks, roadmap builds. I no longer lived tethered to other people's calendars or panicked fire drills. I wasn't scaling a company. I was sharpening a weapon. By Friday, my first quarterly projection sheet was complete. The numbers were obscene in a quiet, clinical way. Then came Maria. Maria had been the strategic brain behind the vendor pipeline at the firm, a woman who once rebuilt an entire operational dashboard overnight after a visionary VP forgot to renew the license. I had been watching her from a distance, watching how she was pushed to the sidelines when Liam needed someone to blame for missed metrics. I sent her a simple message. "What if your work mattered again?" Maria replied with a single sentence. "Tell me where to sign." Then Kyle, an ex-finance expert, to run point on renewals and retention modeling. He had a knack for spotting client fatigue before anyone else. Liam once called him paranoid. I had always called him right. I called him, asked for 5 minutes, gave him 10. By the end of the day, I drew up an equity plan. Modest shares, real vested interest, clear terms. No empty titles, just weight and worth. My team was small, tight, surgical. The kind of crew that didn't ask for applause, just delivered results and left the smoke trails behind them. Meanwhile, back at my old company, panic had metastasized into forced initiative. Kenneth and Liam held a town hall with trembling smiles and unveiled their latest pivot, Viridian Global. New logo, blue and gray, modern typeface. The kind of brand that screamed, "We paid a freelancer on Upwork and told them we wanted to feel like innovation." The launch video featured generic stock footage of wind turbines and laughing interns. Nobody cared. Clients weren't angry. They were simply gone. One of them posted on LinkedIn, "Excited to announce a new partnership with Granite Signal. If you know, you know." That post garnered 812 likes in 3 hours. My old firm reposted a video of Liam giving a webinar about client trust in the age of speed. It received 3 likes. One was from his mom. By Wednesday, I received an unexpected calendar invite from Kenneth Andrews at ViridianGlobal.com. Subject: Urgent opportunity to connect. Time: Thursday, 11:30 a.m. 1200 Seoul p.m. Location: Neutral ground. Belmont Executive Center, downtown. Attached was a vague agenda labeled Mutual Benefit Discussion. I stared at it. I didn't accept, didn't decline. I just let it hover, like smoke before a blaze, like thunder before the shattering storm. Because Kenneth wasn't reaching out to reconcile. He was reaching out because the castle had crumbled, the drawbridge was stuck, and the woman they'd once considered mere operational support now owned the very road they used to walk on. I didn't prepare a deck, didn't need one. I simply opened my inbox, refreshed my contracts, and packed a single folder. Signed agreements, revenue reports, a client survey quote that read, "With Fiona, we never worry. We just build." My empire wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had already replaced them. And tomorrow, I would let Kenneth watch the coronation up close. The lobby at the Belmont Executive Center smelled like lemon-scented denial and freshly printed resumes. I arrived 5 minutes early, carrying nothing but a leather folder and a quiet confidence that clung to me like expensive perfume. No entourage, no laptop, no performative phone call on the way in. Just me, and the weighty realization of everything they had tried and failed to bury. Kenneth was already seated inside the conference room, nervously tapping his Mont Blanc pen as if it were the pulse he could no longer find. He looked thinner, grayer. The confident man who once toasted quarterly wins with expensive champagne now looked like a mere character in someone else's PowerPoint presentation. He stood when I entered, reaching for a handshake. I simply sat. "Fiona," he began, his voice warm and false, like a furnace with a gas leak. "I've been meaning to say, you were always more valuable than we gave you credit for." I didn't respond. He cleared his throat. "We fumbled things, clearly. And look, I'm not here to rewrite history, but maybe there's still a future together. The board's open to a reimagined role, leadership level, strategic latitude. You'd come in as a peer, not an employee." I tilted my head, my eyes unblinking, like a hawk meticulously sizing up a vulnerable squirrel. He pressed on. "We could have been better together, you and I. I mean, your institutional knowledge, our infrastructure, it doesn't have to be a war. It can be a reunion." I reached into my folder, pulled out 3 sheets of paper, and slid them across the table like a blackjack dealer revealing the winning hand. Altrek, Archon, Convergent. Signed, stamped, time-stamped. The ink barely dry. Kenneth scanned them in stunned silence, his mouth twitching slightly. That flicker of corporate composure fractured under the crushing weight of reality. I leaned in, my voice low, but laced with unyielding steel. "Clause 8 wasn't a loophole, Kenneth. It was a lifeboat. You didn't just ignore it, you laughed at it." I stood. I didn't jump ship. I watched it sink. He tried to speak, some last-ditch half-apology, perhaps a deflection. I didn't give him the opportunity. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Twice. New leads, new clients, a new world. I turned to leave, but paused at the door just long enough to end it perfectly. No raised voice, no triumphant smirk, just a final sentence wrapped in velvet and gunpowder. "Next time, read the fine print, especially the parts I wrote." Then I walked out, my heels echoing across the marble like a definitive closing argument. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, I was already flipping through my next meeting notes. Above me, Kenneth sat motionless, staring at the clause he once dismissed, while I, the woman he called replaceable, had done the one thing he couldn't: replaced him. This story powerfully illustrates the importance of self-worth and strategic planning in one's career. Fiona, despite being undervalued and betrayed, had the foresight to protect herself with a meticulously crafted contract clause. This teaches us that knowledge is power, especially when it comes to understanding our rights and contributions in any professional setting. The story also highlights the value of quiet confidence and decisive action over reactive, chaotic responses. Fiona didn't engage in public drama. Instead, she quietly built her own success, allowing her results to speak for themselves. The positive message to the audience is clear. Your talent and integrity are your most valuable assets. Do not let others diminish your worth or define your potential. If you are ever in a situation where you feel undervalued or unfairly treated, remember that you have the agency to create your own path. Build your skills, understand your leverage, and be prepared to pivot when necessary. True success isn't about climbing someone else's ladder. It's about building your own, on your own terms. Trust your instincts, invest in yourself, and remember that sometimes the most impactful revenge is simply living a better, more fulfilling professional life on your own terms. Your Clause 8 might be your expertise, your network, or your unique ability to solve problems. Whatever it is, protect it, nurture it, and be ready to deploy it.